Hello, this video is about filing Form 1094-C. I will cover the following topics in this video: the purpose of Form 1094-C and a review of each of the four parts of Form 1094-C. The purpose of Form 1094-C is to report to the IRS summary information for each employer and to transmit Forms 1095-C to the IRS. Secondly, the purpose of Form 1094-C is to determine whether an employer owes a penalty. This penalty is called the Employer Shared Responsibility Payment. Let's get started reviewing each part of Form 1094-C. Part 1 reports information about the applicable large employer, or ALE. On line 1, enter the name of the applicable large employer, and on line 2, enter its employer identification number. Lines 3 through 6 should include the employer's address. Enter on lines 7 and 8 the name and telephone number of a contact who can answer 1094-C and 1095-C questions. If the filer is a designated government entity, or DGE, filing on behalf of an employer, complete lines 9 through 16. Otherwise, skip to line 18. If the filer is a designated government entity, enter the designated government entity's name and employer identification number on lines 9 and 10. Lines 11 through 14 should include the designated government entity's address. Lines 15 and 16 should list the name and telephone number of a contact who can answer 1094-C questions. On line 18, enter the total number of 1095-Cs submitted with this 1094-C. For example, if the employer is filing 100 1095-Cs with this 1094-C, enter 100 on line 18. Check the box on line 19 if this 1094-C is the authoritative transmittal. If this 1094-C is not the authoritative transmittal, the filer may skip parts 2, 3, and 4. Regardless of whether the 1094-C is the authoritative or non-authoritative transmittal, the filer must date and sign the form and include the filer's title on the form. What is an authoritative transmittal? The authoritative transmittal must report total employer-level data. On the authoritative transmittal, parts 1, 2, 3, and possibly part 4 are completed. An employer may submit multiple 1095-C batches to IRS. Each 1095-C batch must have a corresponding 1094-C. One 1094-C must be the authoritative transmittal. If you are completing Form 1094-C as the authoritative transmittal, you must complete Part 2. On line 20, enter the total number of 1095-Cs that will be filed by and/or on behalf of the employer. For example, if an employer submits 3 batches of 1095-Cs to the IRS, with the first batch including 40 1095-Cs, the second batch including 50 1095-Cs, and the third batch including 60 1095-Cs, enter 150 on line 20, which is the total number of all 3 batches. On line 21, check yes if the employer is a member of an aggregated ALE group. Otherwise, check no. An example of an aggregated ALE group is a group of employers who are commonly owned. Each member of an aggregated ALE group, if it has a filing requirement, must file its own authoritative transmittal. On line 22, check each applicable box if the employer meets the eligibility requirements and is using one of the offer methods and/or transition relief indicated. Let's review the checkboxes on line 22 in more detail. When checking box A, the employer certifies that it made a qualifying offer to one or more full-time employees for all months in which the employee was a full-time employee for whom an employer shared responsibility payment could apply. If the employer checks box B, the employer certifies that it made a qualifying offer for one or more months of 2015 to at least 95% of its full-time employees. There are two types of transition relief available when checking box C. The first one is for an employer that had 50 to 99 full-time equivalent employees in 2014 and did not reduce the size of its workforce or reduce the overall hours of service of its employees and did not eliminate or materially reduce health coverage. If these conditions apply to the employer, check box C and enter code A in Part 3, column E. By doing so, no Section 4980H penalty will apply for 2015. The second type of relief is for an employer with 100 or more full-time equivalent employees in 2014 and is subject to a penalty. In this case, the penalty would be calculated by subtracting 80 from the number of full-time employees and then applying a penalty to the balance. In future years, the number to be subtracted will be 30. If these conditions apply to the employer, check box C and enter code B in Part 3, column E. The last box on line 22 is box D, which an employer would check if it certifies that it offered for all months affordable health coverage providing minimum value to at least 98% of its employees for whom it is filing Form 1095C and offered minimum essential coverage to those employees' dependents. If box D is checked, the employer does not complete Part 3, column B. Part 3 is used to report monthly employer level data. For 2015, if an employer offers coverage to at least 70% of its full-time employees and their dependents, check yes in column A. There are other types of transition relief available that would allow an employer to check yes in this column as well. I highly recommend that you read the 1094C instructions from IRS to learn about the other types of relief. Enter the number of full-time employees for each month in column B. Do not count any employee in a limited non-assessment period. Enter the number of employees including full-time employees, non-full-time employees, and employees in a limited non-assessment period for each month in column C. If the employer checked yes on line 21, check each month in column D that the employer was a member of an aggregated ALE group. As discussed earlier, if the employer checks box C on line 22, either code A to indicate the 50 to 99 relief or code B to indicate the 100 or more relief should be entered in column E of Part 3. If the employer checked yes on line 21, indicating that the employer is a member of an aggregated ALE group, the employer must complete Part 4. Enter the name and employer identification number of up to 30 of the other aggregated ALE group members. Greatland's staff of specially trained account managers are standing by to provide you with excellent Affordable Care Act reporting information. Thank you.